to have a cultural reform in Metro where they want to be good every day, and they value their workers and they value their customers.
This next section we're going to talk about is, our next section is policing. Recently, the county council tossed some money at the police department because of gang violence, growing gang violence in Montgomery County. In addition to more funding for the police department, what would you do as the county executive to deal with the problem of gang violence in Montgomery County, if in fact you do believe there is a problem? I know there are some that do not, so I'll leave that open. But I'll start this time, I think, with Mark.
So gang violence is a problem, and it would be wrong to say that it isn't a problem. I think we need to address it, and I think the county's trying to address it. The police department and the state's attorney came forward and said, we need more tools. They were heavily dependent on what they do with the federal government in terms of cooperation, and to say reaching up farther into the gang structure, they've been heavily dependent on these other agencies. And frankly, the other agencies are stretched all over the country, and we cannot be dependent on other people providing the kind of supplements we need. So both of them got together and said, we need some additional tools, and we're going to need some additional funding in order to go farther into the system and do more than just bother the little guys on the street, but to actually get into the structure of the organizations. And the council, without any dissent, and I think all of us realize how serious this is, we all said, yeah, we need to do this. But we need to do more than that. We need to deal more and more with the social issues that underlie how kids get drawn into gangs. They don't all start out as gang members, but a lot of kids feel out of place. They feel like they don't have a future. They worry about what their prospects would be, and they're under unbelievable pressure of recruitment from the gangs. We heard stories about community members being told that if you do not join a gang, we will find your family back in El Salvador and kill them. So imagine that pressure on a 14 or 15-year-old kid. And if he came from El Salvador, he has every reason to believe that they'll do exactly what they said they would do. And so you're not just recruiting people, you're intimidating people into becoming accomplices in these enterprises. We've got to set up stronger barriers. We've got to figure out how to offer kids enough opportunities, and we've got to keep them away from the people who are driving this gang activity. So kids who are on the street and don't have things to do, they're vulnerable. We've got to figure out how to alter some of this internal dynamic with them.
Bill.
I think we need to treat this as it is, which is a profound and frightening public safety crisis that is getting worse every day. We should not be reading in Bethesda Magazine's online newsletter.
I'm sorry, you can't refer to them or the Senate.
Way out too late. You should not have to read the words, "This is the second body found in a local park this week." Those are not words we want to be reading in Montgomery County. And we have got to be protecting the immigrant community from this scourge. It is absolutely unfair. They are overwhelmingly susceptible to the recruiting, to the violence. When you see the names of the young men and women that are turning up dead, it is consistently members of our immigrant community, they're first or second generation immigrants, and that's just the stuff we know about. We don't know about the extortion. We don't know about all the other crimes that
Well, let me introduce.
this 13 force.
Interrupt for just a second.
Yeah.
You said it was a profound safety issue, and what I hear Mark saying is there's a social component to it that has to be dealt with. Do you feel it's more of a safety issue than a social issue, or?
I think you have to have both pieces of it. I think we have to be aggressively going after the gang leadership, both domestic and abroad, but we do want to recognize the young people that are susceptible to coercion and to recruitment. School resource officers are worth their weight in gold. We need to be investing in the very best SROs who will be a part of the schools, be a part of these communities, know who's at risk for recruitment, and help find safe ways to get them out of that environment.
George.
Well, I'm very much in agreement with Mark's comments. It is important to put this issue in perspective. It's horrific when there is violent crime and there has been some uptick in violent gang activity, but there are a few hundred known gang members, and there are tens of thousands of Latino youth. It is very, very important to not stereotype or suggest that all Latino youth, or even any more than a tiny single-digit percentage of Latino youth, are involved in gang activity in this county. And when you see the election playing out in Virginia this year, there's politicians are very quick to try to scare people and suggest and associate Latinos with gangs. There is a gang problem. We responded when the state's attorney very recently asked us for increased funds and for changes to Maryland's racketeering laws. We support the state's attorney. We support our chief of police. Marc is chairman of our County Council Public Safety Committee. I'm chairman of our Health and Human Services Committee. And we partner frequently, several times a year, to talk about both suppression and prevention and positive youth development. The Health and Human Services Department is involved in after-school programs, identifying at-risk youth and supporting them and giving them positive alternatives to gang activity. I've visited El Salvador 3 times, twice as part of Montgomery County's Sister City project in the Department of Morazan. And I have spoken extensively with people in El Salvador about the war-like conditions that are taking place down there. The people fleeing violence have, as Marc said correctly, every reason to flee. But what the United States needs to do, and we need to partner with our congressional delegation on economic development in Central America. We should be building bridges, not walls, between ourselves and our Latin American neighbors. If we can offer hope for a strong economy and for jobs and for opportunity in Central America, then gang activity will not be as attractive. That has to be done at the federal level, but because we have one of the highest Salvadoran populations and other Central American countries' populations here, the Montgomery County Executive can be a strong voice for that kind of positive engagement in Central America.
Thank you, George. And Roger, you get the last word on this one.
So let's be clear, gang violence is totally unacceptable in our county. And as county executive, I promise you one of the first meetings I will have is with our excellent police chief and say to Mr. Manger, do you have the resources you need to get a handle on this? And if he says, no, I need more, he will get more. So when you pose the question of throwing money at it, I don't think any of us perceived that we were throwing money at it. We depend on our police chief, we depend on our state's attorney to tell us God's honest truth.
Do you think there's
This
a social
is what.
component?
Well, of course there's a social component. Of course there is. But boy, you just have to go at it hard on every level. And so if the police chief needs more resources, I expect to hear about it. If our state's attorney needs more resources, I expect to hear about it. We spend today approximately $25 million on helping our youth today. Okay? So we are committed to an entire package, a comprehensive approach to address this issue. But just know that we're not throwing money at this issue. We are responding to what we believe to be legitimate requests and legitimate needs by our public safety community for more resources, and we will give it to them.
Paul?
I'm going to go back to a tax relief issue. Gary Cohn infamously stated that with $1,000 you can redo your kitchen and buy a car. Okay. The one thing we know for sure is that trickle-down economics does not work. We've learned that over 35 years. My question deals with trickle-up economics. The economy is stimulated with spending. James Carville famously said it's about the economy, stupid, right? My question to you is, George Mason University just completed a study that said for the first time since the turn of the century, I'm not talking about 2000, I'm talking about 1900, more people are leaving the DC metropolitan area than are coming. Twofold. You have people looking for jobs outside DC because the jobs here are shriveling up because of the attack by Congress on the federal workforce. But the other reason is seniors looking for more tax-friendly states to retire to. My question to you is, since seniors spend their money because for seniors, they don't wait for the future because for seniors the future is now, what is your position on supporting tax relief specifically for seniors?
We'll start with Bill.
Paul, you threw a lot in that question, so let me parse it all out. I think I would say more than just seniors, we got a challenge with making Montgomery County weren't for the middle class. I mean, seniors are part of that, particularly if they're on fixed incomes. I think there is a sense, I know there's a sense, I mean, that's why I'm in this race, is a lot of folks have been feeling like in the middle class, the taxes go up and expenses go up and the quality of life has not. And it's partly a tax burden issue, but a lot of it is transportation and the other aspects of our quality of life that just have kind of plateaued. So I think we need, as much as tax relief, we need to be building a vibrant and strong economy so that there's a bigger tax base. And so that we don't have to jack up rates every time that we see ourselves squeezed. Certainly open to, we have programs on the books for seniors, the property tax credits for seniors and folks that have been in their homes a long time. I was part of tax relief on the estate tax, which was pretty controversial a few years ago. It was criticized in a lot of corners for recoupling, starting to recouple the estate tax exemption, but we felt like that was a group of people who were leaving the state and taking their assets, sometimes not even leaving the state, sometimes becoming residents of other states where we would no longer get their income tax, and it really didn't make a ton of sense.
George?
I'm chairman of the Health and Human Services Committee, and we've added a lot of resources to make it easier and more pleasant for seniors to live in this county. We've added a senior transportation coordinator to provide transportation for elderly folks who may otherwise be isolated. There's a very strong correlation between depression among senior citizens and isolation and lack of transportation options, so we're working on that. We've adopted a senior strategic plan to prepare not for what you're suggesting, a drop-off in population, but for what was described as a tsunami of senior population. We're expecting far more senior citizens as a proportion of the overall population. We added a senior village coordinator. We have these wonderful senior villages cropping up in every part of the county where people provide services and help each other in a neighbor-to-neighbor effort. The only tax credits for property tax, which is the real burden on most senior citizens, that we can offer are those authorized by the state legislature. Obviously, we have jurisdiction over tax rates, but we can only offer tax credits when they're agreed to by the state. But we're adding senior centers. We provide a wide range of options for seniors, especially in immigrant communities. We're working with service providers in the Chinese community, Muslim community, a variety of service providers who can address seniors in their own language and provide them with meals and transportation options. So I think we're providing a very diverse array and a very sophisticated array of services for seniors. I'm sure we can always do a better job, and I know that at least the 3 council members here have a lot of experience on this issue and are fully committed to be responsive to the needs of our senior population.
Thank you. Roger?
I started dealing with this issue from my first day on the county council, in part because of the district I represent. We have a lot of seniors in my district. And so I've been very committed to seniors, and we do pride ourselves in Montgomery County of being a community for a lifetime. By the year 2020, 20% of our population will be seniors. So absolutely, are we committed to making life easier for our seniors? We are. I sponsored legislation, as others have, to make sure that seniors don't have to pay an increase in their property taxes. If they can't afford it, they can just get a 0% interest loan from our county and can pay that increase off when they sell their home. Okay? So we have tried in every way imaginable, including I've sponsored legislation that the council passed to ensure that we have free transportation on Saturdays for our seniors. Because they said, oh, Saturdays is important, don't just do it Friday, Monday through Friday. We need it on Saturdays. So we do have these great villages. We do have a commitment on our council to make sure that life is good for our seniors. We do want to retain them. And what you see in part in our land use plans, you see the new urbanism coming about in places like Pike and Rose, places like Bethesda, places like Silver Spring, where you're creating communities where you don't need your cars. Seniors don't want to be in their cars. If we do have autonomous vehicles arrive, I promise you, our seniors and our disabled community will be among the first people using them because they don't want the responsibility of driving. And so we create these communities where you have everything within walking range. That's what I have experienced is helping our seniors as much as anything.
Thank you, Roger. Mark?
Well, I probably echo everything everybody else says about what we try to do. I think it's a real challenge. I wish I lived in a world where there was a zero-sum game, and you could simply say, well, this group of people we're going to give a larger tax break to. Unfortunately, the taxes they don't pay become services we don't provide. And to some extent, you know, if you're okay, say, with more overcrowding in the schools, that has a long-term effect on the seniors, the value of the seniors' home, should they go to sell it or pass it on. So everything you do has consequences, and I think we've got to think about that. You should always think about that. I think when you're doing tax policy, I'm not averse to looking at where else you can go, but I think things should be tailored toward people with need and not just blanketly seniors. One of the problems we have a uniform tax rate in Montgomery County, so we don't have the ability to make distinctions between commercial property and residential property. And as previously said, I don't have the ability to come up with multiple different tax rates for people. So these are all challenges that we have to deal with in terms of how you go about trying to solve the problem you laid out there. I think at the end of the day, we try to make this the most appealing place that you can possibly be so people feel comfortable. But a lot of seniors don't want to leave their homes for the shiny new apartments because the typical price for a home in Montgomery County is under $500,000. To get into the fancy stuff, you're looking at multiples of what you already own your home for. And the last thing seniors want is additional debt at a time in their life when their incomes are going down. So while some seniors may find the new stuff appealing, I talk to lots of people when they talk about, you know, the glorious places that are being built, they're saying it's not for me. And they're actually happy to live in their houses, which is something we're trying to do, is extend people to let them live in place. Because if they live in place and their neighbors live in place, they have the community that they matured with in Montgomery County. People put a high value on community.
I'm going to take a question from the audience. I'll leave because I don't have my reading glasses on, and I can't possibly read the name. But I will ask you, I can read the question. Do you receive money from developers or land use lawyers? We'll start with Bill.
I just got in the race a couple weeks ago, so I don't know when I haven't gotten much money from anybody. But I am not participating in the taxpayer funded financing system. When I talk to folks about this issue, the idea that their recordation tax went up and the property tax went up, and that money has been, you know, put into funds that are going to be used to send political mailers and attack ads, really frustrates folks, right? They're willing to pay taxes for roads and schools and police, and I think folks are a little frustrated that they're not hearing that their voices aren't heard, and it's the priorities of the council members rather than their priorities.
Mark.
I don't know quite how to respond to that. I don't have any other priorities which aren't the public's priorities. I didn't come in here with a set of things that I wanted to do and then a set of candy I wanted to collect. My goal is to be the best public servant I can possibly be and to deliver the things that people ask me to deliver, and I've tried to do that, and I frankly think my success has something to say with it. I have never taken developer money, and I will not take developer money now because I'm not going to have public financing multiply a developer's check and turn a $150 check into a $750 donation. So I've already sent back checks that people sent me, even from some nice guys I actually talked to, and I think they're basically decent. I just do not want the confusion that I'm taking developer money. I think it's absolutely essential that we put these walls there for a reason. I think all of us talk, particularly as Democrats, about the corroding effect of money at the national level. When it comes to our backyard, we start dithering about how corroding it is, and I think we shouldn't dither. It's the same thing at the national level as it is at the local level. The assertion that we took all this money from this tax increase and put it into public financing, the tax increase frankly dwarfed anything that's going to go into public financing, and it went far more into schools and to making sure we're a better county than it did into funding campaigns. And I'll say I have never seen so many candidates running for office. I don't know whether the count, for example, for at-large is 30 candidates now or 40 candidates now.
So the latest I got is 31 candidates that filed their intent to participate in public election fund program.
So not all of them will get there because they won't meet the thresholds. But the beauty of it is that 31 people thought that with a public financing system, if I get the signature, I get the donations, number and quantity, I can participate in politics. And I can tell you from someone who did this, I lost 4 elections getting here. As someone who did this from the other side, I cannot tell you how many people would say, I can never run for office because I can never imagine raising that much money. People have an opportunity to be successful now, and I think it's a good thing. I think the open door to many people is a wonderful thing, and Republicans can take advantage of it too.
Roger.
So I was a very strong supporter of public financing for precisely the reason that Mr. Elrich gave voice to. First-timers, oh my goodness, give them a level playing field by which they could go about and compete, and we're seeing the results of that. It is really a great thing. I never thought it would be something that I would use. I've run before. Traditional financing works for me. It was a tough decision. I looked at it very carefully, but I'm running against people who have been county-wide candidates 4, 5, 6, 7 times. How many did you run before you ran? Four times. So 4 plus 3, 7 times he's been on the ballot county-wide. I'm a district council member. I've only been on the ballot for 20% of the county. I have to reach 80% of the people who've never had who have never had an opportunity to vote for me. So it didn't work for me. 4 years ago when I ran, the headline in the Washington Post was, "Developers seek to oust Berliner." Okay? And so I fought and led the fight against development where it did not belong. I led the fight for lower height at Chevy Chase Lake. I led the fight at 10 Mile Creek. I led the fight to make sure that development doesn't encroach in neighborhoods, that the size of buildings is appropriate for residential neighborhoods. And I've led the fight for development where I believe it belongs, like in the core of Bethesda and in White Flint. So if there are developers who want to support me based on my record, I will take their support as I have taken the support of environmentalists who support me and neighborhood leaders who support me, and I have the broadest range of support of anybody running for county executive.
So let me ask you, just to be plain, you have taken developer money, or will take developer money,
I will take developer money.
and you don't think that that compromises you by doing so?
It has never compromised how I've gone about my business.
Thank you. George?
I'm enthusiastically participating in this new experiment in democracy, the public campaign finance law. More than 650 Montgomery County residents are supporting my campaign with contributions of $150 or less. If anyone else wants to contribute to my campaign, they can do so at www.georgelovetal.com.
I'm surprised it took that long.
But I will not accept more than $150 per person. It has significantly changed the way I go about campaigning. This was only available for the first time in this year's election. In the past, this system didn't exist. So I'm very enthusiastic about it. It's working, it's having great dividends, and I've already reported 3 times. So anyone who wants to know the extraordinary diversity and broad range of my contributions can find that online. Other candidates who claim to have diverse support and who are requesting contributions of $1,500 up to $6,000 have not yet been required to report, and so we don't actually know how diverse their base of contributors is. Mine is available online. I'm fully accountable, and I'm very, very proud of the wide range of support that I've been getting around this community. So for state legislators who voted for the public campaign finance law and authorized Montgomery County to put it in place, it seems a little disingenuous to be so critical of it now.
So, again, do you take developers' money?
I will take up to $150 per person, and I am not discriminating against contributors on the basis of how they earn their living, but I will only accept up to $150 under the terms of the public campaign finance law.
And as Roger, you don't think that if you do, that will not compromise how you deal with an issue?
I've been an elected official for 15 years in this county, and I have always voted based on what I believed, in my judgment, to be in the public interest. I will say that under the new system, I'm spending less time asking very, very wealthy people for very large checks. One of the gentlemen up here had a fundraiser 2 weeks ago in which he was asking for contributions of up to $6,000. I'm not doing that, and I must say it's a great relief to be asking people only. It was Mr. Berliner. I'm very happy to be asking only for up to $150, and I'm getting a great response. It's working. 650 people are supporting my campaign, and I can go back to those folks and ask them to work a poll for me, ask them to put a lawn sign in their yard for me, ask them to talk to their neighbors about me. So it really does bring about a grassroots approach towards campaigning, not just fundraising, and I'm just delighted with it. I'm really, really pleased by how it's working.
You want to respond to that, Roger?
I think Mr. Leventhal, as he said, has been in public life now for, 13 years. And he ran traditional campaigns in which he accepted donations from developers. And as he said today, and I believe it to be so, he has voted his conscience each and every time. That's how I've gone about my business. You can look at my record. If you disagree with my record, then you shouldn't be voting for me. But I am very comfortable with how I've gone about my business on behalf of you, the residents in Montgomery County.
Thanks. We're going to come to the conclusion now, where we'll give you guys a couple of minutes before that. Second question, we're getting towards the end of the evening. This is a get-to-know-a-candidate question.